This is the story of a nation built in the dead of winter and gone before the next winter arrived. In January 1946, Qazi Muhammad proclaimed the Republic of Mahabad, the first and only modern Kurdish state to govern itself in Iran. It lasted exactly 11 months, rising, flourishing, and being crushed, leaving a legacy that still shapes Kurdish politics 80 years later. To understand how it emerged, go back to August 1941, when British and Soviet forces jointly invaded Iran, forcing Reza Shah to abdicate in favor of his young son, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. The 1942 Treaty of Alliance formalized the occupation and required both powers to withdraw within 6 months of the war's end, a clause that would prove critical. The invasion shattered central authority, and in the mountainous Kurdish northwest, a vacuum opened. Under the Soviet shadow, Kurdish intellectuals and tribal leaders organized. In 1944, they formed the Society for the Revival of Kurdistan, known as Kamala. By September 1945, it had grown into the Kurdistan Democratic Party of Iran, led by Qazi Muhammad, an Islamic cleric, judge, and scholar who mastered 7 languages: Kurdish, Persian, Turkish, Arabic, French, English, and Russian. Known by the honorific Peshmerga, leader, he rejected full independence, seeking instead autonomy for Iranian Kurds within Iran, Kurdish schools, Kurdish administration, local governance. On a cold day in January 1946, more than 20,000 people gathered in Chartres Square in Mahabad as a Kurdish flag rose above the crowd. That flag, sewn by a 14-year-old girl named Fatima Asad Shaheen, became an enduring symbol, green, white, and red, with a quill for science, wheat ears for labor, and a sun for freedom. On January 22, 1946, the Republic of Mahabad was proclaimed, with Qazi Muhammad as president. The territory was small: Mahabad and a handful of adjacent cities, Bukhan, Oshnavie, Piranshar, and Naghade. It claimed 3 more held by the neighboring Soviet-backed Azerbaijan People's Government under Jafar Peshvari, with whom Qazi Muhammad had signed a cooperation treaty. A parliament of 13 deputies and a full cabinet were formed. What unfolded was extraordinary. The Republic opened schools teaching in Kurdish, many for the first time. On Founding Day, Qazi Muhammad announced a high school for girls, groundbreaking in a region where educating girls was unheard of. Parliament passed laws for universal compulsory elementary education, with free clothing, food, and textbooks for the poor. Printing presses produced newspapers and 4 magazines, including Gurugal for children. A radio station went live, a cinema opened, plays were staged. Then there was the army. For the first time in Kurdish history, its fighters were formally named Peshmerga, those who faced death, a term later synonymous with Kurdish armed struggle across the Middle East. Leading them was Mustafa Barzani, a commander from Iraq whom the New York Times called the heart and brains behind the Kurdish rebellion. Appointed Minister of Defense and Made General, he commanded roughly 1,200 soldiers, 70 officers, and 40 non-commissioned officers. His son Masoud was born in Mahabad on August 16, 1946, and grew up to become president of Iraqi Kurdistan. Masoud's son Nachirvan is the current president. That dynasty traces directly to this experiment. How much of a Soviet puppet was Mahabad? The reality cuts against that label. The Soviets kept no garrison nearby and no civil agent of standing, and were uncomfortable with the Kurds' refusal to be absorbed into Azerbaijan. Their support was practical but ambivalent: motor transport, keeping the Iranian army out, buying the tobacco crop. Qazi Muhammad acknowledged Soviet funding but flatly denied being a communist. One contrast: in Soviet-backed Azerbaijan, listening to foreign radio carried the death penalty. In Mahabad, you could hear Ankara and London freely in the streets, with few, if any, political prisoners. None of it mattered once the geopolitical winds shifted. The Iran crisis of 1946 became an early Cold War flashpoint. The US and Britain pressed the Soviets to withdraw. The UN Security Council passed resolutions 2 and 3. On March 24th, Stalin ordered troops out by the end of April. Iranian Prime Minister Ahmad Kavam had traded oil concession promises Tehran never intended to honor. The episode fed directly into the Truman Doctrine, and George Kennan's doctrine of containment. With the Soviet withdrawal went everything. No more protection, supplies, or buffer. Tribal leaders defected, resenting Barzani as an outsider and questioning the republic's viability. By June, Iranian forces had retaken Azerbaijan, isolating Mahabad. On December 5, 1946, the War Council told Qazi Muhammad they were ready to resist. He refused, knowing that without tribal support, fighting meant only a massacre of civilians. He chose surrender over slaughter. What followed was systematic destruction. Kurdish schools were shut, presses smashed, books burned. On March 31, 1947, Qazi Muhammad was brought to Chartres Square, where the Republic was born, and hanged for treason, alongside his brother Abu Qasim and cousin Hama Hussein. Offered a blindfold, he reportedly said he wanted to look at his beloved country one last time. His final words were, "Long live the Kurdish nation, long live the liberation of Kurdistan." Mustafa Barzani escaped. Hunted by Iranian and Turkish forces and refused entry at borders, he led his fighters on an epic march through 3,000-meter mountains, crossing the Araxes River into the Soviet Union in June 1947. He remained in exile for 13 years. Legend holds Qazi Muhammad gave him the Republic's flag, which the Barzani family is said to still keep. The national anthem, I Raqib, written by the poet Dildar in 1938 while imprisoned, today serves as the official anthem of the Kurdistan region of Iraq. The Peshmerga name endures. January 22nd is commemorated on the Kurdistan regional government calendar. 11 months. It wasn't the first attempt. The Republic of Ararat had briefly proclaimed Kurdish self-rule from 1927 to 1930, but Mahabad was different. It built institutions. It governed. 80 years later, it stands as proof that a Kurdish state once existed, built schools, printed newspapers, educated girls, and ruled itself. Remembered not for its brevity, but for the moment aspiration became reality.